Hey, how's it, everybody? It is 5 p.m. West Coast time, 2 p.m. Hawaii time, 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and 7 p.m. for our Central Time folk. Looks like eMusic is in the house. Gonna be K for most of the show. Gotta do paperwork, but you're still listening? Fantastic. eMusic coming in for our Central Time folk. So we've got one time zone represented. Awesome. Good to know that you're here, eMusic. It is going to be a little bit of a scatter bag, as it were. Who knows what tricks or treats we will talk about today? But before that, why don't we get the party started? All right, fantastic. Belly Bear in the house. And I am starting that background music once and for all. Almost forgot to do it, but I remembered this time, unlike most other streams recently where I've completely forgotten. Kenny from the Cove in the house, another Central Time representative. Good to see you there, Kenny. Today is the day before Halloween, and if we've got any spooky stories to share, we were going to share them, and Kenny definitely came through with a spooky little story that we will be listening to later. I've got it all printed up right here. Yes, indeedy, it is quite a story. Gina, good to see you here. All right, excelente. People coming on in after perhaps the Halloween festivities last night. Pussycat in the house as well. For those of you who were out and about last night, I hope you had a good time. And for those of you who are hanging out here at Statterbox at the Cinema, I hope you enjoyed Coco, and I hope you didn't laugh too hard at my tear-stained face once the movie was over. Cannot help it, tearjerker movies, even when they're cartoons, do end up happening with me sometimes. So, I don't know what the fall time weather is in your neck of the woods, but it seems like the Pacific Northwest is starting to make up for all of the gray and rainy days. In fact, it's so dark and gray outside that you might notice the lighting is a little bit different. Normally, I have blackout curtains I don't have blackout curtains, but normally I do something to black out my front window. I won't tell you what I do because it's kind of ghetto, but that's okay. It works. However, it is so dark and stormy outside that I actually didn't even bother to black out my window because there's barely any flippin' light coming through. eMusic, is that my black Elvira outfit? Funny you should ask. I actually am wearing a dress underneath that has an overlay that's all gothic and everything. And I meant to wear that today, except for I completely forgot. So now it's just a cardigan sweater over a tank top dress. And it's like my most professional sweater ever. So I don't really know if it would be considered an Elvira outfit. What with there's no bell sleeves. And it's just a very simple cardigan. But I'm glad that you think it looks exotic like Elvira for this spooky Halloween stream. That is right. And let's see here. Gina, you stayed in. Yeah, no laughs. Coco made you cut onions too. Yeah, totally, you guys. If you haven't seen the movie Coco, it's about a Mexican boy who accidentally sort of dies, visits the afterlife, realizes how important family is, and then, happiness abounds at the end. I'm not going to tell you exactly how. I'm not going to tell you exactly what, because there are some plot twists. You don't see that coming, and lo and behold, who you thought was what actually wasn't what at all. But that's all. That's all I'm going to tell you about that. And let's see here. So, Belly Bear correcting Kenny from the Cove. I'm good, but I'm not a bro. That's so funny. That's so cute. I remember when first hanging out with all y'all Ham and Jang gang on the Daily Pigeon Live with Andy Boomatai. we don't, screen names, we don't know who each other is, etc. And so everyone kept referring to me as a guy. And finally I was like, I feel like I need to correct this. So I definitely think it's a good plan to feel free to correct folks if they are wrong, because honestly, we have no idea with some of these screen names. Now, let's see here. Yeah, Kenny from the Cove, way too high cut to be an Elvira dress. Yeah, that is exactly, I know exactly what you're talking about, Kenny. And Pussycat, with your name, I can see why people thought that you were a woman. In fact, for quite some time, I was unsure. But then you started saying some things, and it was like, okay, context, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess and assume that you were a Kane, not a Wahine. And as it turns out, that is correct. You are a boy, not a girl. At least that's what it sounds like. And let's see here, Poppy Shaney in the house. Fantastic, Poppy Shaney in the house. I'm so happy that you're here because I want to share something that Poppy Shaney shared with me the other day, and it looks like actually Poppy Shaney just gifted a sub, so thank you so much, Poppy Shaney. And and Kenny from the Cove, funny you should say that I most certainly do not look like a guy, because throughout my entire life, I have actually been misgendered. People have referred to me as a man. People have thought that I was a man. It's happened even when I was in high school and I would wear a full face of makeup and had hair down to my waist. I had people thinking that I was a man. Now, in defense of the people in the 1980s, when I had long hair and makeup that thought I was a man, it was the late 1980s when a lot of men did wear long hair and makeup. But yeah, I always, I think it's a little bit odd when folks think that I'm a dude too, but you know what, whatever. I don't even care. Because whatever, I know what I is. And you know what? We also know what Poppy Shaney is, and Poppy Shaney is a grandpa. And for those of you who, Gina, you've been misgendered too. Yeah, it happens. It happens to trans people. It happens to cis people. It's the strangest thing, but it happens. And let's see here. Joe Henriksen, your voice is low 90% of the time you talk on the phone. That they think you're a guy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, on the phone, definitely people think that I'm a dude. So it happens. And all you can do is point and laugh because for the most part, it is kind of funny because they're just like wrong. And Poppy Shaney, once again, thank you for that gift sub. And speaking of Poppy Shaney, like I just got distracted. So Poppy Shaney is a grandpa, and we might know that, or we do know that, if you've been hanging out with Andy Bumatai's Hamajang Gang for a long enough time, you might have seen a video that Andy made of Anson, where Andy and Anson were sort of talking about Andy's dog on the screen, and super, super cute. But that is old news. That's Anson back in his puppy dog phase. Now, Anson's grown up, and he's a big boy, and now he's in his shark phase. And so, guess what? He got to have a great experience at the San Jose Sharks game last night, and Poppy Shaney sent me the video, and now, with Poppy Shaney's permission, and I did get it, I'm going to share you quite possibly the cutest hockey video ever. So here we go.
Nancy? What do you say? Please and thank you, please. Wow. Sharky signed it. That's from Sharky. Whoa! Hanson, look.
Empty out the merchandise store, man.
What do you say, Hanson? Thank you, Sharky. Thank you.
All right, so I think that was possibly the cutest little thing, especially since he's putting his arms out for a little hug there at the end. He looked so excited. At first he looked a little bit confused, but then he was obviously getting more and more into it, and I just think that that was the sweetest little video ever. And so, a plus, like Kenny from the Cove just said, he was scoring all the killer swag. I mean, when he... Honestly, I was impressed with just the first thing. I can't remember what they're called, but they like stick on the wall and they're kind of expensive. And so I was just impressed with the first little big wall sticker thing. But then that bag, it was like I think in Harry Potter or something, there's like the bag of holding. You know, it was like that bag just seemed like it was a bottomless bag of toys and gifts. I mean, the bobblehead, the flag, and then of course the baseball cap, and then of course like the creme de la creme, the piece de resistance, the puck. When he pulled that puck out, I was about losing it, and yeah, I just had to with Poppy Shaney's permission, and of course Poppy Shaney was like, I wouldn't have given it to you if I didn't have permission, and I generally, if you guys send me things, I generally assume that permission is given. However, anytime there's a child in the video, you better believe I'm going to actually get verbal permission to share. And Poppy Shaney gave that permission, so I'm so happy that he felt comfortable enough to share that cute video with all of us, because that was about the cutest video ever. I mean, I think the show's done now, right? I mean, we're done. We can just pack up and leave because the show's done. And as Poppy Shaney said, for full disclosure, now I wasn't going to give away this secret, but it looks like Poppy's going to come down with the facts. His daughter worked for San Jose Sharks and is good friends with Sharky. And so Anson, definitely thanks to his older people, got to meet all the right people, sort of like Miguel in Coco last night. Thanks to his dad and his relatives, he met all the right people. Thanks to his dad and his grandpa and his other relatives, Anson gets to meet all the right people. And if you want to argue that Sharky is not a people, that's fine. But in my world, Sharky is a people, even though he's a shark. Yeah, there you go. So, super, super cute. Not quite the traditional gifts that you get for a Halloween type weekend, but I'd say that it was a pretty good score, even if there wasn't candy involved. That is right. And so, speaking of Halloween, I came across, or rather Facebook pushed into my face, one of my memories from like 9 years ago. And I just thought I would share with you guys what I used to do, even though I don't have kids, even though I don't go trick-or-treating. When the holiday mood hits me, I have been known to get fancy with my pumpkins. Now, I don't know if you guys have any pumpkin art that you did this year or last year or whatever, but I am definitely somebody who likes to get those silly books that have the fancy pants diagrams. You know, my little jack-o'-lanterns aren't necessarily a big old face. They're just random stuff. And so I did a little bat carving, and I did a little cat carving, and then I did a little dragon carving. And I have to say, you know, they actually turned out kind of neat. And so if you guys have ever been thinking about using one of those, you know, those books that they sell during this time of year to, you know, as stencils for your shapes, they, you know, some of them are somewhat complicated. You definitely want to maybe, you know, go with the easier at first, but you can get some really cool looking stuff. And let me tell you right now, the reason why those pictures were taken in the dark with the glowing candle in them is because they look way better that way. Like if I had taken pictures, and I wish I had now that I think about it, but if I had taken pictures of those carved pumpkins with in pure light, they would look janky as they wouldn't look good. All the little jagged things and all the flaws, you'd just be like, you're impressed with your work? No, actually I wasn't very impressed with my work. But then when you put them in the dark and you glow the candle in it, all those things that were not perfect, they just fade away and it ends up looking flippin' awesome. And Pussycat, you know, it is and it isn't hard to do. Some of the things are hard. Like that dragon was very difficult because you have only skinny pieces of pumpkin holding it to the pumpkin, whereas that bat wasn't really that difficult. Because and then the cat actually wasn't that hard either. The tail on the cat was probably the hardest, but everything else wasn't as difficult. By far, that dragon is the most advanced one that I've ever done. And so it's like when you've got the little skinny pieces that are holding the bigger pieces, that's when you need the scale. But luckily, in those books, they have a wide variety of designs intended for advanced to intermediate to beginner. And obviously, I would definitely recommend starting with the beginner because you don't want to be frustrated and say, screw this is dumb. When actually, it really isn't that difficult if you do it right. You know, like, they give you a bunch of tips in the book, actually, to make things a little easier in regards to carving pumpkins. Like, here's a pro tip, and we never did this as a kid, but it totally makes sense once someone told me to do it. So you decide where you're going to put your jack-o'-lantern face, your design, you know, on the pumpkin, where you're going to do that. Okay, well, when you empty out your pumpkin, that wall where you're going to put your design, make it as thin as possible. Like, keep scraping it. You know, if the pumpkin is, you know, 1.5 inches thick, well, maybe scrape off 1/2 inch so you only have to poke through 1 inch worth of board. And scraping off and like making your carving surface slightly thinner, it makes all the difference in the world. So, pro tip for next Halloween, or actually, I guess if you haven't done your jack-o'-lanterns yet for this year, you still got a day to get one out on the porch. And so, Pussycat, you had a pumpkin man that's sinking halfway in quicksand. Interesting. Okay, yeah, total graveyard with the pumpkin man trying to either escape the quicksand or I guess climb out of that grave. Let's see here. Thomas a Turtle. Boo. Good to see you. You stuffed a shirt and put the pumpkin on top as a head. Sounds perfect. Sounds exactly perfect. And Poppy Shaney, exactly. It's a great pro tip, and I had no idea about that. Precisely. So, those little, those silly books, like, they're more than just stencils. Like, if you actually read the instructions, I don't need to read instructions on how to make a jack-o'-lantern. Yeah, actually you do. I mean, you don't need to, but you should, because this is their job, this is their industry, and I'll tell you, dude, it actually makes a huge difference. Like Joe just said, I gave up, the pumpkin's too thick. Exactly, sometimes they can be too thick, and so you just scrapey, excuse me. And some of the books that I'm talking about actually come with tools, and the tools that they give you, they look like stupid pieces of cheap plastic crumb. You know what I mean. Actually, dude, they're really useful tools. Like, seriously, the scraper to scrape the plane thin, really useful. The different kinds of jagged, serrated knives that are actually kind of dull, and you couldn't cut yourself with them, but they totally, the little plastic knives that they give you, or I mean, the knife itself isn't plastic, it's the handle, but those are really effective pumpkin carving tools, way more effective than the kitchen knife. And so for real, if you are feeling inspired and artistic and want to use the pumpkin as your medium, those stupid, silly books are very useful, not only for their tips and tricks, not only for their stencil designs, but also for the tools that come with them. So there you have it. That is, that's my little my pumpkin pro tip. I was gonna say a perpy instead of a turkey, only it's not a turkey, it's a pumpkin. Anyway, whatever. And so let's see here. Belly Bear, your son decorates his house inside and out. Pretty creepy. You just go to visit. Wow, that's so incredible. I just don't have the motivation. I mean, honestly, you guys, you really did see the height of my decorations in that trio of pumpkins. Like, that was probably as decorated as my house has ever been for any holiday. I had 3 pumpkins, and that's about it. But yeah, I see some neighbors who, like, there's somebody down the street from my house that, and I don't know if this is legal, but they did it anyway. They somehow attached a witch to the electrical pole, the wooden electrical poles. But it made it look like they've got it fastened so it looks like a witch was riding her broom and she didn't see the pole, and so she just flew right into it. And so now she's squished onto the light pole. I have no idea how they did it, because they had to climb up to do what they did. And I'm pretty sure it must not be legal, but I'm not going to go tell on them. And if anybody wants to tell on them, I mean, it's not like they hid it. It's right in front of their house on a public street pole or light pole or whatever, utility pole. But, super cute. Although there are some people who literally have, like, covered their entire yard with that fake spider webby stuff. And I've never worked with that fake spider webby stuff, but it looks like it might be a pain in the arse to take down, especially when you've coated your entire house to look pretty much like a spider cocoon. So anybody who has any kind of experience with working with the fake spider web decorations, let me know. Like, is that really it just comes down real easy, or it looks like it would tear apart and, like, little bits would just get stuck everywhere and you'd be finding that Halloween decoration for months to come afterwards. It looks like it's kind of a pain in the arse. And see, that fake spider stuff traps small birds. I kind of wondered about that too. It makes me very uncomfortable when I see the yards and houses that are, like, so coated with that stuff. It's just kind of gross. And Belly Bear, you like the Dia de los Muertos decorated skeletons? Yeah, the way the Mexican tradition honor the dead. I think, the skeletons and the skulls in particular, those are generally referred to as sugar skulls. Now, I don't know whether or not they have candies or whatever that are decorated like that or whatever, I don't know why they're called sugar skulls. But I think what you're talking about is the sugar skulls, where you've got the fancy painted skull. And yes, I absolutely would. I love those too. In fact, I have a sugar skull on the back of one of my legs, and that symbolizes my mom and my dad, who have both passed. So even though I am not of Hispanic heritage or Latino heritage, I did co-opt that a little bit. And you can come at me all you want. I recognize that it's a questionable decision that I made using that imagery, not being of that heritage, but it's still a beautiful piece of work, and I do love it. So, let's see here. Poppy Shaney, your type A would not allow you to work with the spiderweb stuff. You're having anxiety just thinking about it. Right, it seems to me like it would not be something that would come down really easily. Sort of like, actually, no, not sort of like, even more worser than the individual tinsel strands that, people put on their Christmas tree. The individual, it's not tinfoil, but you know what I'm talking about, the tinsel strands. Not the garland of tinsels, but the individual strands that people used to hang on their Christmas tree. It seems like the spiderweb stuff would be even more of a pain in the arse than that. And that is a pain in the arse. And, Belly Bear, you heard that the fake spiderweb is not good for the environment. Well, yeah, if Kenny from the Cove is right, and I'm thinking he might be, birds probably do get entangled in that stuff. And honestly, it's like, spiderwebs are way cooler than that. All it looks like is a bunch of cobwebs. And cobwebs aren't scary, they're just gross, basically. So let's see here. Doe Hendrickson, hoping that Poppy Shaney's doing great. You're in the gym 7 days a week. Oh, good for you, Doe. No, you're not trying to catch up, but you live in a smoking building. You go to the gym as early as 2 a.m. Wow. Looking for a new place, but Hawaii. Interesting. Yeah, well, you know what? I personally, though I'm usually asleep at 2 a.m. or thinking about going to sleep, 2 a.m. would be probably a great time to go to a 24-hour gym, because the last thing I want is crowds. And you know what? Going to a gym, even a couple times a week, is so amazing. I'm so proud of you for doing it 7 days a week. That is super awesome. And because, even if you're not trying to lose weight or become a, marathon runner or a bodybuilder, maintaining strength is such a difficult thing as you get older. And I am learning that the hard way. Oh my God, you guys. Oh my God, you guys. I used to, back in the day when I got my dishwasher, my old dishwasher, I went, got it at the store, loaded it into my own car, drove it to my house, unloaded it from my own car, assembled it, and put it in my kitchen. Because I used to be strong. This week, that's right, this week I got a dishwasher. There's the box for it. I got it. I got it delivered to my house, and it was awesome. And the act of tossing it around, taking it out of the box, putting it on its side, putting the casters on, blah, 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 making it look like this, and moving it into my kitchen. So literally, I was just taking it out of the box, putting the casters on, which did require me to put it on its side and then lift it back up or whatever. I was so sore the next day. I was embarrassed for myself. I mean, I can't believe how weak I have gotten as I've gotten older. I used to be able to throw dishwashers in and out of my car by myself. Okay, maybe I didn't throw them. Now I can barely push the stupid box 2 feet in my house without thinking I'm gonna have a flippin' heart attack. So, yeah, going to the gym 7 days a week, I think I might need to take a hint from you, Doe, and I think I might need to get a little bit of a lesson here, because I am not the person I used to be when I was younger at all. And so, yeah, even though I got my fancy pants dishwasher, which, by the way, is super awesome and I'm super stoked for, I kind of felt silly and bad and old because I couldn't push it around. The next day I was so exhausted. It was hard for me even to get out of bed. I mean, that is just ridiculous, okay? And Kenny from the Cove, I used to be strong. Yeah, being out of work since 2019, you can relate, right? Exactly. I mean, the stuff that you used to, especially you in construction, that you used to take for a living, just everyday exercising, like, I mean, seriously, just swinging a hammer for a couple hours is actually like some pretty hardcore work. And you would even probably think about that as work. That's just the same thing as, walking across the street. Yeah. But now, after a couple hours of swinging a hammer, the next day you might be like, wow, my elbow, my forearm, my shoulder, kind of feels it. And yeah, there you go. So, yeah, all those things that I was told when I was younger about getting older, y'all, they weren't lying. Y'all, they weren't lying. Yeah. Kenny from the Cove, no swinging a hammer if you could get your hands on a nail gun. Oh, that's right. I forgot that the technology has changed for the better when it comes to construction. But still, though, lugging around all those nails that the air gun or the nail gun needs, I mean, it's its own set of work. And let's see here. Belly Bear just strained your right lower back lifting a heavy oxygen machine down off your coffee table. Didn't feel it until you started vacuuming. Oh my God, you've been homebound day 5. Ugh, but getting better. Oh, well, I'm very happy to hear that you're getting better. And I am so sorry that happened, because backs are so, I don't know why I'm bothering to tell you guys this. Backs are so important. When your back hurts, the pain radiates outward. The back is the center, is the center of your structure. Oh, nothing good comes out of having a sore back. That is for sure. And so let's see here. Doe's saying that the air is fresh, about 5 people, but you got that from the smoke. You used to be a power lifter back in the day and worked construction too. You loved it. Right, yeah, so you definitely know what it means to keep strength and then perhaps lose strength and then regain it. So it sounds like, though, so the building that you live in allows smoking. And so the gym that you go to, is that in your building? Because it almost, I guess what I'm really wondering is, they're not allowed to smoke in the gym though, right? I mean, right? Right? You're never allowed to smoke in a gym, right? And I say this because I'm not one to frequent gyms, so I don't really know exactly all the rules, but smoking in a gym seems like counterintuitive as hell. So I've got to assume that, well, I'll just assume a whole bunch of things. Sorry about that. I just think I heard a kitty and I was seeing which kitty it was, because you guys, I know that I said that I only have 2 cats, but yeah, I have 3 cats now. I'll show you the other cat later on, but I do have 3 cats now. And let's see here. Okay, so you go to a 24-hour fitness half mile up the street. Got it. And wouldn't it cramp your workout if you smoked during your workout? I don't know, dude. Seriously, Kenny, in the 70s, they used to smoke everywhere. That's why, I kind of assume that, of course, there's no smoking nowadays in a gym, but I kind of have to wonder, in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, were you allowed to smoke in gyms? I remember my mom, one of the first pieces of advice she gave me as a kid when looking for clothing to buy was to make sure they didn't have any cigarette burns on them, because people would be smoking their cigarettes while looking through the polyester pants at Liberty House or whatever. And then the ember of their cigarettes would sometimes touch that polyester. And lo and behold, you got yourself a cigarette burn on a pair of pants that's on the rack to be sold. And even if you didn't have the cigarette burn, since everybody's in the store smoking cigarettes around all this clothes, all your clothes that you're going to bring home smell like cigarette smoke because they used to smoke in the stores back in the 70s. So, like, I don't know, man. Did in the 70s they smoke at the gym? Crazier things have happened, I guess, right? And so, let's see here. Belly Bear, the pain was radiating. Your son's been a union art worker for years and is just starting to have shoulder pain. Oh, bummer, dude. Yeah. The shoulder pain would, that's gonna get him. The reason why I say that is I used to live with a blacksmith, and her and all her friends, they're pounding iron, and I know that that's not what iron workers do, but my point is, it's hard job, and your shoulders bear the brunt of it, basically. And E-Music, are you kidding me? Okay, so doctors used to smoke while doing hospital rounds. Okay, so if that's the case, then I definitely think that they might have smoked while they were in the gym working out, right? Right? Let's see here. Okay, so Kenny from the Cove, the last time you had a gym membership in the 80s, smokers were vehemently encouraged not to smoke on gym property. So that sounds like they weren't allowed to smoke in the gym, but the moment they got outside the gym, they were puffing down, and the gym people were like, hey, y'all, maybe don't do that here. Okay, I could see that logic. But it also still makes me think, well, okay, that was the 80s. What about the 70s, right? Because in the 70s, things were just a little bit different. And let's see here. A nurse told you about the doctors, and it was normal still in the 70s. Exactly. That's why I'm thinking, because you guys, you all know, I don't think Vanilla Coke Pepsi's in the room, so he's, I think, our youngest buck that is in the house. He obviously has no idea, but I think every single one of you guys here in the chat remembers the 70s was just grimy. The smoke hung heavy in the air everywhere. The 70s was just grimy. And so I'm not surprised, I guess, that it was still the norm in the 70s. And Kenny from the Cove, only Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno worked out in the 70s. Yeah, I guess that probably was true, and they probably weren't the smoking type. But Belly Bear coming in with absolute truth, and I can verify this. You heard a lot of dancers, ballerinas smoke. Absolutely they do. And one of the reasons why they do, and it's the same reason that models smoke, is to keep thin. It's so they don't eat. And because when you're a dancer, you need to keep your weight thin. It's a little bit different now, but back in the day when white bodies were considered the ultimate pristine ballerina form, it wasn't just white bodies, it was thin, lithe, delicate, graceful, thin white bodies. And so even though dancers are extraordinarily muscular and extraordinarily strong, they were not encouraged to be bulky. And having grown up with a couple different women, well, girls at the time, who then grew into people who were intending to make dance their career, abso-flippin'-lutely, they smoked cigarettes to keep their weight down. Cigarettes and coffee are the staples for ballerinas and models, at least in the 80s. Like I said, things are different now. Different body types are being accepted in the world of ballet. Different skin colors, different shapes, more muscular physiques are being deemed acceptable for women in the dance realm. But back in the 80s, skinny is what they wanted you to be. And so, okay, so Doe, you've been a gym rat since you were 18, and you never had or saw anyone smoke in the gyms you belonged to back in the day. 3 gyms, no smoking, how strange. Okay, so that's actually really good to know. Because the only reason why I was thinking, like, they might have smoked in the gyms in the 70s is because everywhere smoked in the 70s. But that is nice to know that if you wanted to escape the cigarette smoke, you could go to one place in the 70s, and that would have been the gym. So, Gina, you were born at the start of the 80s. You don't remember the 70s? Okay, well, let me just tell you, things were grimier in the 70s. Although the 80s had some griminess, but the 70s was grimy. In fact, Gina, have you ever seen a rerun of, what is it? Good Times? Good Times, the opening scene, the opening theme song, opening credits, or whatever, of Good Times is the grossest air you've ever seen. And that's what the air looked like back then. So, so go Google that when you've got a minute, and and you can be like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember that in the 80s too. It was gross, because it was kind of gross. I mean, you know, I was never a cigarette smoker, but my parents were, my sister was, cigarette smoke was all around me. I was never really bothered by the cigarette smoke that was everywhere. But now that they've gotten rid of the cigarette smoke that's everywhere, oh my God, dude, that was so gross back when cigarette smoke was forced upon everybody. And let's see here. Terry in Scotland, so good to see you. Oh no, you were sitting there in an empty theater for 45 minutes and you said, I'll bet Molly's on. Yeah, there we go. Glad you could make it on over here. Good to see you. It's a little Sunday stream. And Belly Bear, you want to make a t-shirt that says, I survived the 70s. Seriously, dude, I feel like that might actually sell. Because for real, a lot of people, a lot of old geezers like us look at today's kids and think, man, you would never have survived the 70s. You know, there's just so much extra protection. I mean, really, seriously, what was a bike helmet? I mean, could you even get a bike helmet in the 70s? If you were riding BMX bikes, you probably could at, like, the specialty store. But as far as just, like, you know, people, like, could you actually, did you wear a bike helmet? Because I know I didn't. And let's see here. Bobby Shaney, oh my God, no doubt. Bobby Shaney never thought that the skinny model, starve yourself look of the models in the 80s was attractive, and then you throw in that stupid shoulder pads. Don't get me started on those stupid shoulder pads. My mom loved those things. I would tear them out of every shirt, and she would just freak out. Let's see here. Doe, you went to India Bank back in the 80s, and it smells like pure car fumes. Yikes, yeah. And so, yeah, Kenny from the Cove, it's a wonder that the 70s didn't catch fire with all that smoking, no doubt. Okay, that river did catch fire. I can't say the name of the river, but yeah, I do know exactly what you mean. I absolutely know what you mean. And, well, you know, Pussycat, you survived more than the 70s. Yeah, I think, well, you know, I feel like we all might have, shall we say, in our own little way. And you know, I mean, like I just said, none of us as kids most likely had bike helmets, so that alone is kind of a survival issue. And then after we survived the 70s, the 80s came, and that's when the real fun began, right? Right. All right, so let's see here. We talked about the everythings, and we talked about the stuffuses, so maybe we should talk about different things now. How's that for a segue? You got it. All right. So, we're talking about the 70s. Kind of scary in the 70s, right? Well, it's the day before Halloween, and so I've got a little spooky story for y'all, and I am going to, let's see here, what am I gonna do? I need to get my specs on that I can read, so I can read things. And all right, so you guys, now this is a true story, and it's a true story in such a way that it's like, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to share this story, because it's like, it's kind of dark. But, you know, that is what this season is for. And it is kind of scary. And, as Kenny from the Cove said, it happened in the 70s. So, let's get ready. Now, this is a picture that Kenny took of the house. And you can see the neighborhood is fairly open. Doesn't look like there's a lot of fences blocking views, and so this is actually I'm bringing these details up because it actually does matter when we're getting into this story. But before we do that, Terry was saying back in the 70s, the old theater in downtown Sacramento presented midnight shows that were difficult to see through the miasmic atmosphere. Yep. You know, those laser shows were mighty smoky affairs as well at the science centers, etc. Yep. I may have been to one or more of those little laser shows back in the day. But alas, I don't think they do laser shows anymore. All right, so let's see here. Okay, so Kenny also helped build the carport and the den for the house that we're looking at, right? Okay, so let us begin, shall we? Story provided by Kenny. In the late 1960s, developer Floyd Allen decided to expand Allen Street south beyond Robertson Avenue. Until an agreement could be reached with landowner Joe Morse, for a while, that expansion could only accommodate two houses. One on the east side of the street, that would become 501 Allen, and one on the west side, which would become 502. For a few years, there were only two houses on the 500 block of Allen. Sometime after that lengthening of Allen Street, with Joe Morse's barbed wire cattle fence serving as the southern property line for both houses, the Carlson family, Wallace, father, Irma, mom, and their young sons, Randy and Robert, bought the house at 501 Allen Street. In 1968, my parents bought the house at 502. The Carlsons and the Caseys became friends, and my sister and my brother ran around with Robert as they were close in age. As a little kid in a small neighborhood, I often hung out with Mr. Carlson. He was always up to something cool in their backyard, so I'd go over there either to watch what he was doing or actually help him do whatever he was up to. He spent a lot of time making old, discarded water heaters into smokers and barbecue pits. Over time, he taught me how to read tape measure, how to use a pipe cutter, how to operate a vertical bandsaw, so I could cut pars for his project. I even got to use these skills that Mr. Carlson taught me to help him and his two sons build a carport over their driveway and to convert their back porch into a den. Years went by and Allen Street opened up more and more, and our families got neighbors to our south. In the late 70s, both of the Carlson boys had graduated from high school. The Carlsons began to contemplate Mr. Carlson retiring from his job. Not wanting to spend retirement in their modest home in town, they bought some land out in the county, put a house on it, and started working towards making the house and the land their retirement spot. As often as they could, the Carlsons would spend time out in the country at their place fixing it up. One Labor Day weekend on Sunday, Mr. and Mrs. Carlson decided to spend the night at their country place since they were both off the following Monday. I had been hanging out with Mr. Carlson watching football, and Mrs. Carlson was busy preparing food for the two would take for them that night. When it came time for them to head out, I followed Mr. Carlson from room to room in their house, making sure that every window and exterior door was locked and that all the electrical stuff was either turned off or unplugged. The last room we went into was the master bedroom. As we entered, I took notice of an old black and white TV on a crickety rolling cart pushed into one corner of their walk-in closet. Mr. Carlson made sure that bedroom window was locked and had me double check it. It was definitely locked. We turned and made our way to the front door of the house. On the way out the front door, Mr. Carlson turned on the port light, pulled the front door shut, and locked it. Then he pushed the screen door shut and locked it too. We said goodbye, and after they left, I went across Robertson Avenue to hang out with my friend Ed in his driveway. While the Carlsons were gone, their house was visible by their neighbors on all four sides. This is me, Molly, saying that you can tell that from that pic. I'm bringing that up. Take note of the picture. So, while the Carlsons were gone, their house is visible by their neighbors on all four sides. The people behind the Carlsons were having a barbecue that was still going on when the Carlsons came back later. The family to the left of the Carlsons were hosting a birthday party for their teenage boy, and that was also still going on when the Carlsons came back. My parents, along with their friends, Mr. and Mrs. Hanshaw, were sitting on lawn chairs in our front yard, hanging out, shooting the breeze. My friend Ed and I were sitting in his driveway, listening to music and hanging out. All four sides of the house at 501 were fully visible by surrounding neighbors. Nobody could have gained entry to that house unobserved. On top of that, all of us neighborhood were pretty vigilant about watching out for our neighbors and their property. Later that night, the Carlsons came back. Mrs. Carlson had forgotten some items that she wanted to take to their place, so the two of them came back to get them. Shortly after return, we all heard a loud scream coming from inside the Carlson house. My dad, Mr. Hanshaw, and a couple of dads from next door to the Carlsons all went over to see what was up and what they could do to help. Soon, there were cops and detectives crawling all over the Carlsons' house and asking everybody around if anybody had seen anybody go into that house. I never got the rest of that story until years later after the Carlsons had moved out to their country place. Whenever I did bring up that night to my parents, they would just brush it aside and tell me it was nothing. Much later, when I got older, I got the rest of that story. When my family moved into 502 Allen Street in 1968, the Carlsons were already living in the house at 501. I grew up thinking they were the very first family on the 500 block of Allen. I was wrong. The house at 501 Allen Street was first owned by a young captain in the Army who was stationed at Fort Hood and his wife. That captain was a veteran of Vietnam War and suffered from what would later become known as PTSD. One evening, when the captain's duty on post was done, he came home. Once inside the house, he went to the master bedroom, where his wife was laying in bed watching their little black and white TV on the rolling cart. Using his Army-issued .45, he shot his wife in the head and then stepped into the walk-in closet and took his own life with that same pistol. When the Carlsons bought the house, they knew what had happened, but they were still willing to buy it. That TV and the cart it was on that fatal night was still in the house when the Carlsons moved in. Nobody wanted to claim it, so they just kept it. Eventually, they just unplugged it and shoved it in the closet, as they never watched TV in the bedroom anyway. The night when the Carlsons came back, we all heard Mrs. Carlson scream. Those two knew something was amiss as soon as they walked in the front door. They could see a light coming from the rooms, and they could hear a loud hissing, static-like noise. When they went into the master bedroom, the light that Mrs. Carlson and I had watched Mr. Carlson turn off was on. The TV and the cart were out of the closet and pushed up against the wall across from the foot of the bed. It was plugged in, turned on, and playing static as if it were getting no signal. There was no antenna on the TV and no cable connection. There was no signal. There was no way that TV could get a signal. Mrs. Carlson had screamed when she saw the TV. She never would say what about the scene had frightened her enough to elicit a scream. There's no way anyone could have gotten into that house unnoticed, not with the full moon and it being a holiday weekend with everybody out and about at the Carlsons' house. And you can testify, and Kenny can testify, that when the Carlsons and I left the house, it was locked up and secured, and all the lights, except for the front porch light, were turned off. And that TV was unplugged and in the closet. So, he finishes with, I'm not saying that this is paranormal or poltergeist activity, but I can't find a rational way to explain it. So, that, my friends, is kind of weird. And yeah, as Poppy Shaney says, nope, not sleeping in that house, let alone go into that house. Yeah, exactly. So, that's a little spooky story there for this time of year. And I've got one more spooky story that's not nearly as spooky. Let's see here. Terry in Scotland. Conclusive evidence of the presence of a wee spooky. Yeah, you got it. Exactly. Now, I've told this story before. I think I told it last Halloween, and I'll tell it again. So, we were in college, and Kenny, you've never been back in the house since the Carlsons moved out. Fair enough. So now, this particular spooky story doesn't have nearly the spookiness that Kenny's story had. But there was one night when I was in college, and four of my college friends and me, we were gonna go from the dorms. We had to go through the woods down to this place in the woods called the Meadow, because it was a full moon out, and every full moon we had a full moon fire circle in the meadow, and the meadow was in the middle of the woods. So you had to go through the woods to get to the meadow. Now, the full moon, when there's a full moon and it's clear out, the woods are particularly dark because counterintuitively, when it's cloudy out, the light from town reflects upon the clouds and it creates sort of an ambient light within the forest. But when the night is clear, there is none of that ambient light reflecting from the clouds. And so the forest is particularly dark. Holly, Rachel, and I could not see anything. Nathan and Jamie, who were with us, were a little bit more sure-footed in the dark. They had taken that trail so many times, they didn't feel the need to see. So Nathan went booking down the trail first, Jamie following him, and we watched Jamie get further and further away until he was a dark shadow. But, so all three of us are walking really slow, three abreast, sort of like lions and tigers and bears holding each other, trying to find our way forward in the dark. We see Jamie stop in the trail, way down the trail, and we see him stop. And then we see him, it looks like he turns around, and then he starts coming back up the trail for us because we're useless and clearly we need help. So he starts coming back up the trail for us. And pretty soon he starts running up the trail to us. And we see his shadow coming faster and faster and faster. And his shadow is approaching us so fast, and he is getting faster and faster and faster, and he is not slowing down, and he is going to hit us and run into us. So all at the exact same time, just as Jamie is about to smash into our line of three across, all of us jump and scream and let go of each other. And there was nothing there. And so we laughed and we're like, oh my God, what just happened? And so I'm like, well, I thought Jamie was coming. And Rachel's like, I thought Jamie was going to run into us. And Holly's like, I totally thought that he was running for us, blah, blah, blah. Well, Jamie wasn't there at all. Yet we had all seen his shadow stop, turn around, and come back up the trail for us. So that was super freaky. And we laughed so hard because what else were you going to do besides laugh? And the rest of the night was a little bit jittery because how in the heck do you explain that? And Gina, I don't know what you're saying sorry for because holy forking snit is exactly what Kenny's story is. That is the exact response that Kenny's story should elicit. My story is more just like, oh, hee, what a silly way to freak yourself out. Terry in Scotland coming out here. Shadow detachment is a thing. I'm telling you, man, I've never heard the term shadow detachment, even though I've told this story a million times, but that is exactly what happened. And I don't know if you're being serious by saying that or not, but seriously, dude, it was like the shadow, well, like I just described. we saw Jamie stop, turn around, and come back up the trail. Or we thought we saw it, at least. And Cindy Krause, good to see you. Kenny from the Cove just shared a super, super scary story, and it was a little bit intense, so I thought I would finish it off with a slightly scary story that was not nearly as intense. But let's see here. Kenny from the Cove had another scary story, apparently, that he was thinking of telling. But alas, the toss-up between the House at 501 and the human skull story finished with him realizing people could still get in trouble with the skull story, so I guess I won't tell the skull story. Yeah, we don't need any kind of internet proof that might get used in a trial and held against someone, so don't even worry. Terry in Scotland, don't worry that you have forgot to host. I am such a horrible Twitch person. I always forget to host. I always forget to raid. So if you want to go and make magical hosty things, by all means, but this girl's so bad at it, I certainly do not expect anybody else to do what I completely forget to do all the time. So, speaking of things I forget to do we have music? Yes, we do. All right, then. Okay, so let's see here. What else do we have today? Let's see. So, Kenny, I have to say I am a little bit curious about the skull story. So, if you can find a way to, share that skull story without, naming names. The names have been changed to protect the innocent or the not so innocent. I maybe would like to hear that. I mean, we might have to hold it off till next Halloween for the spooky story Statterbox at the cinema. But yeah, I am very curious now that you've mentioned that there was a runner-up story. So, does anybody else have any experience with shadow detachment or something weird and unexplainable to your logic, at least? I think everybody probably has something a little strange. Let's see. I know that once I had. Well, that's a different story for another day. So actually, we're gonna put a pause on that one. So yeah, very curious if any of you all have stories that might be a little spooky dooky, but it might be hard to tell them all in such a short chat space. But yeah, if you've got a little quick story, by all means, I would love to share it with the crew. While I'm sipping on my pamplemousse, and let's see here. Okay, yeah, I figured it was Kenny's story. Is that elicited the holy forking snit? Absolutely, and that's a completely appropriate response as far as I'm concerned. And Kenny from the Cove, you'll tell us the story in an email, but you can't share it. 2 words. Cold case. Got it. Oops. And yep, let's see here. All right, so a couple weeks ago, or maybe last Wednesday, Stosig, there was a user here who popped in, and I think he was trying to be a smart ass. But then when I was able to sort of answer his question, he realized that we're kind of a strange group of people, and he sort of likes hanging out with us. Because Stosig did pop in last night at the Coco movie, but we weren't chatting it up, so he didn't hang out too much. But if you guys remember, Stosig asked a question about whether or not beavers live in their dams, or if they just build dams because they don't like water flowing. And I gave kind of a right answer and kind of a wrong answer. So I wanted to go on record and correct what I said. And I've got a picture. Not a map, just a picture. So it turns out that the dam is only what they use to block the flowing water. And then they live in a thing called a lodge that's right behind the dam. So the dam and the lodge are kind of one unit, but they're also 2 separate things with 2 separate functions. The dam is to block the water. The lodge is to provide a little space to live in. And so this is a little Beaver fact thing that I found off of the interwebs, and it looks like it might be, legitimate enough that we can believe it, even though it's found off of the interwebs. And so, even though Stosig isn't here today to see my correction, I just wanted to share with you guys that a beaver lodge is not really the same thing as a dam. And Anne Ware, she was trying to tell me that on the stream, but I missed her message, and I would have and could have and should have listened to Anne, because if I listened to Anne, we would have had the facts from the get-go, as opposed to the random stuff that I think is right, but probably isn't. And what I said was only this much right instead of this much right. So there you go. And eMusic, you have a large beaver dam here on a river. Yeah. Beavers are flipping everywhere. About a year ago, no, maybe not even a year ago, I don't know, not that long ago, there's a little pond in the middle of town here. Actually, it's technically a lake, but if you looked at it, you'd be like, no, that's a pond. It's small. Some beaver, this pond is literally in the middle of town. It borders on a freeway, for goodness sake, right? Lots of ducks live there. There's some fish in the pond, whatever. All of a sudden, one day, a beaver showed up and started tearing down the trees and building a little dam. Nobody knows where the beaver came from, but yeah, beavers are everywhere. All right, Belly Bear's coming in with something. Let's see here. Not shadow detachment, but you were 18 years old, babysitting overnight your two little cousins, and a lady was screaming at the top of her lungs. You could hear her approaching the house. Her screams were blood-curdling, and stopped at the front door. You froze in bed, and nothing happened, and you never found out what happened. Oh, yeah. I mean, what are you, what are you going to do? I mean, you're not going to, right? I don't even know what I would have done in that situation. Because, on one hand, it's just like, I feel like maybe I should go help. But on the other hand, I'm not opening that flipping door. I'm just an 18-year-old girl with two little kids, and I don't know what's on the other side of that door. So, that makes me really uncomfortable, Belly Bear. Although not as uncomfortable as I'm sure you were when it happened to you. Did your little cousins, were they awake? Did they hear it? Did they freak out? Or did everybody just stay in bed? Because honestly, I would have probably just stayed in bed and hoped that the cousins didn't hear anything, and hope that nothing, and just hope that if I stay in bed, it will all go away. That's pretty much, you can see what I would be doing if I was in bed right there. Just hearing that story makes me tense. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's not, I hope they paid you extra. Potential hazard pay for babysitting. My, oh my, no. Yeah, no. All right, so now I've got a couple. So if you guys have more stories, keep them coming, and I'll definitely share them. But now though, let's see here. I've got two questions for you guys. First off, this one question is not very important, but it's kind of important. All right. As I mentioned before, I only have two kitties. Actually, I have three kitties. And this particular kitty, this picture was taken just before the stream today. And he is sleeping in my cupboard linen closet on my towels. Clearly, he's made himself very comfortable. This kitty cat, when he comes in my house, he meows hello at me. He eats food. He looks at me, meows hello again, and then goes and finds his place to sleep in the cupboard. Clearly, he lives here. Even if I didn't admit it, he does. So now, I need a name. I need a name for the kitty. So, for those of you who are wondering, it was the one who bit my finger. That is the cat that sent me to the urgent care and the urgent care twice. That is the culprit. And yeah, Cindy, you could tell when I opened the cupboard door, did he look shocked or frightened by my presence? Not the least. He was just like, why are you letting the light in? I'm sleeping. So, yeah. So, yeah. That's my big dilemma right now, is what to name the cute kitty. And Belly Bear, no, the kids never woke up. Whew. And you found out later that it might have been a neighbor being abused by her husband, which really, I mean, what would you have done if you'd opened the door, etc., etc.? But yeah, that's, I'm glad the kids didn't wake up. And, Pussycat, you want me to call him Pinky? Stripe as the name possibility, says eMusic. Kenny from the Cove, Axel or Felix or Xerxes or Max or Maddox. Okay, I don't want Maddox because that's a girl name in my head. And I don't want Axel because that's the lead singer for Guns N' Roses. And so that doesn't work. And Felix, he's a black and white cat in my head, so I don't know about that. Xerxes and Max, I don't know about that. And the reason why I think Kenny is coming in with all these X names, just so you know, I mentioned this on my Facebook feed a couple days ago, and here's the thing. So, we've got the kitty, and his name, Cubby, Belly Bear, now see, there we go, Cubby might work. So, before I decided he was fine, he's mine, I had referred to him as the Silver Fox. But the Silver Fox isn't exactly a name you can call for your kitties, right? So I was like, then I was calling him Foxy, but it was like, Foxy's a girl name, and it's just not hitting me right. And so then I was like, well, you know, Foxy Lady is a good Jimi Hendrix song, and even though he's not a foxy lady, he is a foxy kitty, and his fur is the silvery kind of fur that looks a little bit purple in some light, so sort of like purple haze. So I was thinking of calling him Hendrix, but I don't know if I like that either. And Pussycat, name him Lono. No, I've already got a one Lono that I talk about enough. I don't need to confuse the kitty when I'm talking about, when I'm being a fangirl about Lono. So yeah, I don't think I'll name him Lono. But Cubby though, Pinky and Cubby are actually, for some reason, Pinky, there's no reason to name him Pinky, yet it is absolutely resonating with me. And Cubby, that could work too. And let's see here. This is a lazy bones. He is a bit of a lazy bones, actually. He is a little bit of a lazy bones. But then again, what cat isn't a bit of a lazy bones, really? So, Snug Bug. Yes, he is a snug bug right now. In fact, I think he's probably still in that cupboard. Kenny, since he bit me, I could call him Nipper. I like the idea, but I don't know. I don't know if I want my neighbors to mishear me calling my cat Nipper, if you're picking up what I'm laying down. Nipsey, that could work. Nipsey, way better choice. That could work. And let's see here. Pussycat didn't know I had a Lono. Well, I don't have a Lono, but I have fangirl tendencies towards a Lono, and I talk about Lono a lot. And so if I'm being a fangirl and I'm talking about Lono, I don't necessarily want my cat to get confused, as it were. But speaking of Lono, we haven't had a Lono break in a couple streams, so why don't we do that now?
in honor of Hanani Apuleona Kukuiohiwai. Ka pole pumeana hualalai e nani ka ike nao na maka Ui ana maka ia Kukuiohiwai e rehi holu ke koe I ka mali e mahalo au I ka laka mai kai a ki halani laua e me lipo Mele aina ke ia nona Aku aloha Na ke aku amalama ki ai E ola ka inoa e Kukuiohiwai Ka hua nai ka laiku Ki halani kilo molo ai konea lele a mehiva O ulu ke aloha ki ke kahi I ka nohona maoloa E ka kamakani o na kona I ka po anua ka mahina kau O olo he mai ke kani o iauka Ina leo hone o na manu I ka ke E mele aina ke ia Rona aku aloha A ke aku amalama ki ai E ola ka inoa e Kukuiohiwai Ke aloha maunu I ka home I ka au O haia e na lau kukui E vehi ka e na ona kupuna Ano hano no oe e Kukuiohiwai E mele aina ke ia Ona aku aloha Na ke aku amalama ki ai E ola ka inoa e Kukuiohiwai E mau ke aloha ia Kukuiohiwai Oh, say it.
All right, so yeah, I'm liking some of these suggestions. Now, Pussycat, you said you knew a cat named Sebastian. For some reason, I assumed that cat had to have been orange. I don't know why, but, you know, that's just what I what I envision when I see that name. And I'm thinking that Hannibal is a good one and Khan is a good one. So we'll see which one maybe sticks. But, you know, it might not be either of those because I'll tell you, Cindy Krause, they're all El Gatos, including my Mike. So I don't know about that. But it is interesting to know that you, Cindy, didn't get any cats. The cats were like, no, this is our home now, which is pretty much what a lot of cats end up doing. The cats that I have right now, I definitely chose. But for the most part, it seems like a pattern in my house seems to be I have 2 cats that I chose, and then a third cat comes in and says, I pick you to be my house. That's what happened with my little girl kitty. That's what happened with Big Poppy, and that is what is happening right now with Silver Foxy, who doesn't have a name yet. And Big Poppy, he went through a lot of names before he finally got stuck with Big Poppy. And oh, you know what? Actually, I skipped a one. I also had one named Puff. And Puff, in fact, was, I think, the grandpa of Big Poppy, because Big Poppy looked exactly like Puff, except for Big Poppy looked like he ate 4 or 5 puffs, because he was huge, whereas Puff was just little. So, Pussycat, the great and powerful Oz. Yeah, well, you know, that's true. That would work, too. Don't look at the kitty behind the cupboard door. And yeah, Gina, this one definitely did choose me. And one of the reasons why I didn't like him to begin with was because he has a tendency to spray. I don't even know what I'm about to do besides jinx myself. But I'm gonna just say it. He seems to have grown out of that habit, which is why I let him back in my house. That was the dumbest thing in the world for me to say. Y'all know. Y'all know why. That was the dumbest thing in the world for me to say. And let's see here. Cindy Krause, feral kitties are a breed of their own. And yesterday they brought you a mouse. Well, as it turns out, yesterday one of my kitties brought me a mouse too. And this time it was actually dead. And I praised him so much. And then he ate it in front of me, and I didn't like that part. But at least he killed it, and that's all that I do. That is all I care about. And Pussycat, oh no, he's not going to be in my house. Yeah, exactly. But see, unfortunately, he is an outsider, but I have a cat door, which is the root of all of my rat problems and some of my cat problems. But this particular cat seems to have decided that because I've yelled at him enough, like he knows that it's inappropriate in the house, and so I'm thinking he maybe has figured this out, and he's been coming in my house. Well, basically what happened is when I went to Hawaii in June, he decided that he would move in, and so he did move in. And he didn't spray, so that was good. But all of the people, well, only 2, the people that I had come over to my house to feed my cats, they never saw my cats. But they were like, are you cool with this gray cat that's in your house right now? You know, and it's just like, oh, it's like, is he all gray? Or is he white with gray tabby? And they're like, no, the white with gray tabby guy, he's on the porch. But this guy is gray and just inside. And I was like, well, the white with gray tabby, that's Jimmy. And he's a jerk. And I don't like him. So keep it out of the house. But the gray one, he's fine. He lives there. So, yeah. So they saw him. They didn't see my cats, but they saw the random out feral cat that had decided that this was his home. So yeah, there you go. Nail it shut, says Pussycat. No, I can't nail it shut. And Cindy, they bring you grasshoppers, lizards, and mice. You know, my girl kitty, Ashes, she is a huge fan of grasshoppers. And honestly, she can bring all the grasshoppers she wants into my house. I do not care. But it's the stupid rats and mice that they bring in alive that is the problem. So, but the grasshoppers, no, that's so cute. When she's just hunting a little grasshopper, she feels like she's so brave. But she's not really. It's just a grasshopper. All right, you guys, awesome. It is 3 minutes to the end of the hour, and so I am super stoked we were able to sit around and chat about nothing and chat about spooky stuff, and I got to brag about my dishwasher, and I'm super stoked that we've got some kitty names on the table here. And let's see here, Gina, how about Rocky for a name? I feel like I had an animal named Rocky already, but maybe not, because I know I had a cat named Stony. I feel like I've lived with a Rocky already, but I guess if I can't remember the animal, then it's not that important. So I guess that would work. Let's see here, Kenny, Smokey. Yeah, I guess, but Smokey, see, reminds me of Puff, and Puff was named Puff because he was such a scaredy feral cat that he would show up for a second and then he would disappear like a puff of smoke. And so I would call Puff Puff because he would disappear like a puff of smoke. And so I associate smoke with Puff. And so I don't want to disrespect Puff's memory, because Puff was the feralest of feral cats, and he eventually came into my house, and he eventually learned to sleep in my house, and he eventually even slept in my bed, and he would let me scratch his ears, and he would purr and hiss and growl all at the same time when I scratched his ears, because he didn't understand. I mean, he liked it, but I wasn't supposed to be touching him, so he was sort of angry about that, but he really liked it. So yeah. So I don't want to do anything to disrespect the memory of Puff. And Puff, like I said, I think was the grandpa of Big Poppy. So there's like a little family tradition here. And I know I get way too into my cats' lives. Whatever. Gina, Rocky as in my love for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Okay. I can see that logic. And yeah, exactly, Kenny. Don't touch me, but don't stop. That was exactly what Puff was all about. But Puff did trust me enough, and he did eventually, and I know that this is a horrible way to end the stream, but I guess it is, Halloween time, so we're talking about a little bit of death. He did eventually die under my bed. That's where he went to get his final sleep, and honestly, I felt so honored that he felt safe enough to come to my house. And oh yeah, here we go, cutting onions. And so he just holds a precious memory in my heart. Now, Terry from Scotland. How about Inoki, Hawaiian for devoted? Well, I don't know. I like that. That could work out. Actually, because clearly, even though I rejected him on multiple occasions, after he bit me, I yelled at him so much that he knew he wasn't even allowed in the house for food for a while. He knew that he was in trouble. And so, but he still kept coming around. So, yeah, maybe Inoki, that might work. Yeah, Inoki in his nook. Exactly. Inoki in his nook. That could be. All right. We might be formulating a plan here, people. Let's see if this'll stick. Let's see if it'll stick. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for hanging out. And I want to thank everyone for, let's see here. Wait, hold on, Belly Bear. You had a friend whose boyfriend named her cat in Spanish the name of your backside. That's funny. I'm not going to do that. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for hanging out. I want to thank everybody for contributing to the chat, for upping your sub, resubbing, gifting subs, all the bits, etc. I want to thank everybody. And let's see here. I think Wednesday, even though last Wednesday there wasn't a show, this Wednesday there will be. And And I will most likely be bending your ear about washing machines, because now that I got my dishwasher in, I want to get my broken washing machine taken care of so my appliances will be up and running. And so I want some info about washing machines if you guys have any, but not tonight. That'll be on Wednesday. All right then. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I will see y'all later. Take care.